Hello and welcome to the Modern Money YouTube channel. In my class on how to pay off debt, I wanted to hurry and address this before we actually jump into class, that this was originally filmed to be a Skillshare video. So you might hear me talk about things such as lessons throughout the class because originally it was going to be chopped up into little bite-sized pieces to be an actual Skillshare class. With that being said, I would greatly appreciate you guys doing me the favor of hitting that subscribe and like button down below, as it greatly helps out my channel and helps other people find this debt payoff course as well. So without further ado, enjoy the class. Hello and welcome to my course on learning to pay off debt and starting to repair your credit. Firstly, I want to congratulate every single one of you on taking the very first steps on starting to learn to pay off your debt by clicking on this video and starting to be interested in a course such as this. In this course, we will cover a multitude of things, including what to avoid, the right mindset to have, what you can be doing even right now to start paying off your debt, and how to implement all of that into your lifestyle. If you've been looking for a course on how to pay off debt in a streamlined manner, as well as making sure that you don't hurt your credit in the process, but actually start to rebuild your credit, then this is going to be the course for you. Can't wait to see you in the first lesson. Alright, now before we actually get into the first lesson, I want to hurry and take another second to congratulate you guys on choosing to take a course like this. Once again, it is the first step in actually starting to pay off debt. For me, I started listening to Dave Ramsey when I was in trouble and I needed to start learning to pay off my debt, and a lot of what I learned from him I have implemented into this course, the best bits of it. And then on top of that, I took some of my own real world experiences of being over $10,000 in debt at one point, and the things that I had to struggle with and the things that I learned, and sprinkled them into this course as well. So I hope that you guys will enjoy it. Just so you guys know, I have went ahead and made a little bit of a PowerPoint slideshow so that it isn't just me talking to a camera the whole time, but rather we have something on the screen that you guys can be looking at and using to jot some notes down for yourself. And this brings me into my next thing that I wanted to say, that you should go ahead and grab a pen and paper, or better yet, get your phone out, open up a new notes section, and take a little bit of some notes while we go through the course. Jot down the most important pieces, and I think that it will be very helpful for you to be able to reflect back on those notes later and use them if you do have any questions that come up along your journey of trying to pay off your debt. Alright, so getting right into this, very first thing that I want to talk about are things to avoid. Okay, so for me, the first thing that happened to me in my debt journey was I got scammed, believe it or not. I started looking for different ways to pay off my debt, and I was just scared trying to figure out what I could do to try and get out of this mess as fast as possible. And eventually, and unfortunately, I stumbled across some guys that seemed like a legit government agency, something about like the National Debt Foundation or something like that. And in reality, they weren't like a legitimate agency. They weren't like a legitimate government help program. But there's a lot of those out there, guys. So you got to watch out for these debt programs that are trying to sound like they are some legit agency or something like that, and that they're going to be able to help you more efficiently than what you can help yourself, essentially, okay? Because what they don't tell you guys is that with these programs, there's hidden fees, there's high interest rates, and sometimes, and in my case, they required me to close my credit card accounts that actually still had balances on them. And that is actually terrible for your credit. Believe it or not, one of the worst things that I ever did for my own credit was making this mistake and closing credit card accounts that still had balances on them. Not only were those some of my longest credit lines that I had had, so it affected my credit length, but it was also bad to just close credit cards in general, as the bureaus don't like to see that. Alright, and on top of this, I wanted to hurry and touch on debt consolidation loans, because some people are like, hey, maybe I should get a debt consolidation loan. I have a little bit of credit card debt, I have some auto loan debt. I mean, it seems it's spread all around. If I could just get it into one monthly payment, maybe that would make things a lot easier. And you know, sometimes a debt consolidation loan does make sense, but you gotta look at the actual terms of the loan, because a lot of times, again, like these debt programs, there's high fees, higher interest rates than what you would be charged anyway, using some of the strategies that I'm going to talk about here in a minute. Longer terms than what it would take for you to do the strategies that we're going to talk about in a minute. So with that being said, I wanted to touch on all these things in the very first lesson, as I don't want you guys to make the same mistakes that I made when I was first trying to figure out how to get myself out of debt. Okay, now into the next lesson, and this one is about mindset. And as I say up there on the title of the slide, mindset is a must. And it is true when it comes to almost anything in this life, especially when it comes to paying off debt though, that if you don't believe in yourself, then quite frankly, it's not going to happen as easily for you. I'm not going to say it can't happen, but it's definitely not going to be as easy for you. So don't accept that I can't as an answer. Don't say I can't get out of debt. It's just too deep. It's not ever going to happen. That is just going to put you even farther behind, my friend. So please don't put the negativity into your head. It's time to start thinking positively. Now, the other thing that we have to do is we got to get ourselves out of the mindset that it is normal to have debt. And it is normal in this country to have debt. It is very true that most people that we know, most of the people that we grow up around, and most of the people that even teach us about finances talk about it being totally normal to have debt on things like a car or credit card debt or different things like that, like maybe you have personal loans, right? And you know, in this society, it is very normal for people to have debt, but quite frankly, I don't want us to be normal. I want us to start trying to get ourselves out of debt, which is going to alleviate that monthly income for us so that later on we can start using that monthly income to actually build wealth for ourselves instead of putting money into other people's pockets by paying boatloads of interest on our debt. Now, good debt is a thing, and that is something that is very true. There are forms of good debt, but for right now, while you're in debt, anything besides basically the mortgage that you have, I want you to be focusing on trying to pay that off. The next mindset is that you got to get out of the keeping up with the Joneses mindset. I know that, again, in this country, in this society, it is a bad societal norm that everybody struggles with, that you got to keep up with your neighbors, your best friends. Maybe your friend just got a really nice car, or maybe your neighbor just got the boat that you've always wanted. And yeah, you might be able to go down there and qualify for a loan and go borrow some money and buy something like that. But at the end of the day, we're just accruing more and more debt trying to keep up with the Joneses. So let's get ourselves out of the keep up with the Joneses mentality. Now that brings me into knowing your own finances. Now, if you know your own finances and you're using a budget, then you can actually think about this and go, well, how much money do I have in the bank? Can I pay for a boat in cash? Can I pay for this car in cash right now? No, I can't. Well, maybe I shouldn't go buy those things, or maybe I shouldn't go shopping today because maybe I need to be saving some more money or paying off this debt right now instead, right? So that brings me on to the last point here, is that we got to learn to be frugal and to be living with our finances in our mind almost all the time. Now, I know that might sound like it's crazy, and how am I going to remember everything, and am I going to know where I'm at besides just opening my bank account and saying that there's money in there? Well, that is why it is so important, going back to touch on the budget, that you learn to budget and that you keep a budget every month. Because the more and more you budget, the more and more you're going to start to remember your numbers. You're going to be like, oh yeah, I'm allowed to spend this much on food every month. And oh yeah, I do actually let myself spend a little bit on some clothing, but I've already spent $25 of the $50 that I allow myself to spend every month on clothing. And so maybe I should hold off and save a little bit of that money until next week so I have some money to go shopping with my friend next weekend instead. These are all things that I suggest you start doing, but they all stem off from keeping a budget. All right, now in this lesson, we're going to talk about something that you can literally be doing right now as you are watching this video, or right after you finish the course, whichever one you prefer, to actually start paying off debt. This is going to be a really cool thing that will show you that, you know what, maybe I can find some extra income somewhere. Maybe I can alleviate some monthly expenses and actually free up some income to start paying this debt down. So here is what I want you to do. So what you're going to do is you're going to go get your bank statements from wherever you bank. If you have a credit card, if you have a checking account, if you have a savings account, wherever you are spending money every month, I want you to go get those statements, and we're going to go through these statements and we're going to make a list of all our reoccurring monthly subscriptions. These are things like Netflix, your phone, your gym subscription, clothing store subscription. Say you have something online that you get like a clothing box every month, or your internet bill or your cable bill. Maybe you have a food subscription service like a HelloFresh box, right? These are all things I want you to jot down on a piece of paper. Now, this is where it gets fun. What we're going to do is we're going to go through each and every single one of these monthly subscriptions one by one and ask ourselves some questions. So the first question that you got to ask yourself for each and every one of these things that you've written down is, have I used this in the last 30 days? And you know what? A lot of the times there's going to be some type of automatic reoccurring subscription service that you have that you just don't use. And if you don't, cancel it. Please, please cancel it. Because as soon as you cancel it, even though it might be a little bit of work to go onto their website and figure out how you have to go through their sneaky way of trying to cancel, because they always like to make it hard, it will alleviate a little bit of extra money every month that can start going straight to, you guessed it, your debt. And so this is going to be a really great thing to do. Go through it all, and if you do not use it, or if you haven't used it in the last 30 days, cancel it. Now, what about all the stuff that I did say yes to and then I am still using? Do I do anything with that? Well, you ask yourself the next question. Am I overpaying for it? Now, you might be going, what do you mean am I overpaying for it? How could I be overpaying for it? Well, let's use the phone, for example, okay? Maybe you went to AT&T and you decided, well, Becky has the new iPhone and she's got 3 camera lenses, and I'd really like to have 3 camera lenses on my phone too, so I'm gonna buy the newest, nicest iPhone, even though it's gonna be $30 extra every month. That is what I'm talking about. Are you overpaying for things like that? Could you have chosen to get the cheaper iPhone, maybe 2 or 3 models back, but you'd pay less money every month, but still have the same ability to make phone calls and text, and you really still have the fundamental things that we need our phone for? Heck, if it's still 2 or 3 models back on an iPhone, you're still going to be able to have all your apps, you're going to be able to get on Facebook, the internet, all the things that smartphones are doing right now in these new ones. The only things that you're going to be lacking are maybe your pictures aren't as crisp as Becky's, okay? So go through things like your internet, your phone, these food subscription boxes. These are great things to ask yourself, am I overpaying for it? And if the answer is yes, try and change it. I know that some of these things are locked in on terms, so you can't always change it, but keep those things in mind, especially the next time you might re-up your phone or it might be time to trade in. Maybe keep the phone and just only pay for the service, right? All right, now in this lesson, let's talk about the different payoff methods / strategies. Now this is going to be your foundation for getting yourself out of debt and learning to get yourself out of debt. So there's a couple of different methods that are widely accepted out there among many financial gurus, and we're going to talk about them right now. Okay, but the first thing I want you to do is to make a list of all your debts. Kind of like how we did a list with all your reoccurring subscriptions up in that last lesson that we just did, but this time I want it to be all your debts, whether it's your credit cards, your car loans, your personal loans, whatever you might have debt in. I mean, you can even put your house on there, but again, we're not really worried about like a mortgage payment. But anything that is a bad debt, a high interest rate debt, something that you're just trying to get rid of, I want you to make a list of all those things, and I want you to write down their balance, their minimum payment, as well as their interest rate. Now, the reason that we needed all those things compiled on a list is because it's going to help us decide what strategy or what payoff method to be using to help get you out of debt. Because depending on some of those variables, you might want to use one method over the other. Now, one thing that I want to mention before we jump into these methods is that there's one thing that is common amongst both of them, and that is that no matter what, no matter which of these methods that you're choosing, you're going to still be making your minimum payments on all of your debts. So whatever your minimum payment is on like your credit card, then you're still going to be making that minimum payment no matter what strategy we use. I don't want to see you destroying your credit by forgetting to make your minimum payments on things, just trying to focus on one of these methods that we're about to talk about. So I want to preface with that, but now let's get into the actual strategies / methods, okay? So the first most popular method for paying off debt is called the debt snowball method. Now, which again, we are still paying all of our minimum payments for all of our debts, but at the same time, we focus all the extra income on one debt at a time, working our way from the smallest balance debt up to the highest balance debt. That allows you to put any of that extra income that we just barely alleviated by canceling some recurring subscriptions up above, or by budgeting well and trying to tighten budgets, and actually focus them into the smallest balance debt that we have. And so say it's maybe like a debt of $100. Well, cool. Maybe you're able to save $90 extra every month, and so in 1 month, plus a $10 bill, you're able to get that one off the list. And now that you have that debt paid off, well, guess what? That minimum payment is gone, and now that is even more extra income left over at the end of the month that you can start throwing at your next highest one that maybe is like $500. And say now maybe you have $123 or something like that that's left over every month. So now it might take you, 3-4 months, but hey, we're gonna get the next one done, and then you move on to the next highest. So it's maybe 1,000 or whatever. This is basically the method. You're just trying to go work your way from the smallest balance debt up to the highest balance debt, and along the way, you're increasing that extra cash that you have every month to try and tackle the next biggest one with even faster. Now, the second method is very similar to the debt snowball method, except for it's called the debt avalanche method, which again, prefacing, you gotta still make all your minimum payments while you do this, but instead of focusing it on the smallest balance, you're actually going to start to try and focus it on your loans that have the highest interest rate. Now, this is going to be best for some people that have some super high interest rate loans, like some credit card debt loans and different things like that get up to the 20% type range. Then Debt Avalanche starts making more sense. But basically what it is you target these high interest rate debts first, the same way that we focused on the small balance debts in the snowball method. So you just start hitting that and hitting that and hitting that with all your extra income every single month until it disappears, and then you work your way down to the next highest interest rate debt. So now you might be going, oh, all right, well, those both sound great, Caden, but I don't know which one to choose. So here's the big thing I want you to remember. It's mostly mindset. The big thing is that we're throwing our extra money every month at these debts, okay? But there is going to be a little bit of a difference timeline-wise for you depending on how high of an interest rate you might have on some of your loans and how big some of the balances are on some of your loans as well. So for that, what I recommend doing is just going to old Dr. Google and type in the search bar, debt avalanche versus debt snowball calculator. And guess what? Since we already have a debt list of all your different debts with all the different interest rates and all the different balances and all the different terms and all that good stuff that we already talked about, you're going to be able to plug in all your debts into any of these calculators online. And what it will do is it's going to do all the time math for you, and it will tell you which method is going to be best, okay? Now, I will leave you with this. Dave Ramsey does use the debt snowball method, and that is the method that I used as well. I used the debt snowball method when I was getting myself out of debt, and I gotta say, it worked really great. I feel like using the debt snowball method is going to be really easy to remember for a lot of beginners because it's just, hey, I just work my way from the smallest balance loan up to the largest balance loan, and along the way, I gain more extra income, and I just keep throwing that back in, and it's like compounding as we go. Get the snowball bigger and bigger, and as we roll down this hill, this extra money snowball just keeps getting bigger and bigger for us, and eventually we're going to reach the bottom of the hill and we're going to be debt free. Alright, so now let's put all this information we've talked about together and compress it so we remember exactly what we're trying to do here. Alright, so very first thing is we gotta get in the right mindset. We can do this. We're gonna do this. We're gonna get out of debt, and I'm gonna do it as fast as I possibly can because I am sick of living with debt, and hey, I don't need that in my life anymore. After that, we're gonna create our debt list, which is again, all of our different debts, whoever the lenders might be, all the balances, all the interest rates, your term, all that good stuff, all comprised on one list. And then what we're going to do is we're going to use a debt calculator, or we could just choose the snowball method if you want to go with the Dave Ramsey advice, and you're going to commit to a debt payoff strategy. Basically, at this point, this is when you're really just pouring yourself into it. You're going, all right, I've done the math, or I just want to go with the Dave Ramsey strategy, and I'm going to be committed that I'm going to use all that extra money that I know I have at the end of every month because I keep a budget, super important, and I'm going to start hitting these small balance loans or these high interest rate loans every month right away. So we're going to commit to our debt payoff strategy. And part of doing that is actually implementing that strategy into your budget and into your real world lifestyle. So that means that we got to go back to mindset again, and we're going to start spending a little bit more frugally. We might start actually tightening things down a little bit. We might tighten the budget down a little bit. Whatever we can do to get more extra cash in our hand at the end of the month that we can go and apply towards our debt, the better. And so yes, implementing this strategy into your budget and lifestyle, it's extremely important, and it's going to tie everything all together, and it's going to make this process feel natural. And before we know it, we're going to be done with getting out of debt, and we can go on to build wealth, and we can go on to invest. Alright, a little bonus lesson here for anybody who is just super committed to this and that does want to try and get through this as fast as possible and wants to get out of debt as fast as possible. Here are some tips to speed things up. So first things first is we gotta put bad spending habits to rest. We've gotta hold ourselves accountable for our spending. So that Starbucks you might like to go get every morning on the way to work, well, do you really need Starbucks coffee for $5.75, or could you go and get maybe a McDonald's coffee for $1 or $1.50, depending where you're at? You know, things like that. It saves you a little bit of money here and there, and it's going to put more money in your pocket at the end of the month to apply towards your debt. So we got to be looking for those bad spending habits. I mean, if you could cut coffee out altogether besides just brewing your coffee at home, even better. But those are great things to be thinking about trying to do. Next thing that I suggest doing that really does help speed things up, and I couldn't believe that you could do this, but this is something that Dave Ramsey tells people to do all the time, is actually call your debt collectors and try to negotiate that debt that you have. Now, the first time I heard this, I was like, all right, this seems a little weird. I don't know how I feel about calling these people and, asking, hey, can I pay you back less money? It seems rude, it seems wrong, and, honestly, I didn't do it except for with people that are in collections with, because collection agencies, they bought that debt already, so the original person that you got the money from, they've already been sort of reimbursed for some pennies on the dollar or whatever, but now these people who are the debt collectors actually make even more money on you again by recollecting that debt. I mean, it's not like they're making more money on you, but basically they bought the debt as a security. For them, it's almost like an investment, but they're just professional debt collectors. And so anything they get from you is basically just a cherry on top for them, and you're adding to their margins. So I'll tell you what you do. You call up your credit card collection agency and you say, hey, I know that I owe you $2,000, but I'll tell you what, I'm going through and I'm trying to clean up my act. I'm trying to pay all my debt off. And $2,000, I just don't have it right now. But what I can do is if we can maybe lower you and make you one of my lower balances, I can tell you that I'm going to be able to get to you guys for sure a lot sooner. And I'll start being able to pay you guys a lot sooner. So is there any way that we can negotiate this debt and try to knock off $500-600 or something like that? And it might not always be $500-600 that they can knock off, but even if they knock off $250, that's $250 that you now don't have to pay off. That is still debt. So you basically, by making a phone call, just made $350 by negotiating your debt with a debt collector. All right, now this one's going to be a little difficult for some of you, but sometimes it's a good idea to just sell some of your stuff. If you were like me and you bought some things that you probably just shouldn't have bought with credit cards and used debt to buy it, maybe you went out and you bought yourself a brand new Louis Vuitton sweater. You bought yourself a brand new Armani set of jeans or something like that on a credit card. Well, you could still probably go online and resell them for a decent amount of money. Maybe you bought yourself a watch that is way too expensive or something like that, but you could still go online and sell it and get some of your money back out of it. Well, all that money that you get from selling that stuff, even though it hurts to part ways with it, you can put it right back to paying off your debt, and it will help you get out of debt a little bit faster. As much as it might hurt, and yeah, as much as you might lose some money on those things if you do ever choose to rebuy them again once you're out of debt, well, it sucks. You can kind of just think of it as a learning lesson in life about debt. Now, I know that we've talked about this a little bit already, but I wanted to just put this in again because people just don't emphasize this enough. You gotta tighten your budget as much as possible if you want to speed this thing up. And some people don't cut from all the areas that you really can cut from. I mean, some people are like, well, I'm tightening my budget. I took out all the extra reoccurrings. I took out everything that I could think of that I just really didn't need. But, did you touch your food budget? I mean, you probably are budgeting, maybe a little bit too much for food. Not everybody is, but some people might, like maybe I did at one point. I know I did. I budgeted way too much for food at some points during my debt payoff period. And what I had to do is I had to start being like, okay, let's cut that down. And maybe with food, you start only spending cash so you really know that you're staying on budget with your food budget. Because it's really easy to overspend on things like food. But yeah, just go back through that budget and even categories that you might be like, all right, I don't know if I can actually tighten that down. Think about it. Is there a way that you can tighten that down? And if you can, and if it's worth it to speed this up for you, maybe do it. Now, last but certainly not least is that you can get a second stream of income by having another job or by having some type of a side hustle. Maybe you go and you do some DoorDash, or maybe you go and do Postmates deliveries, something to make some extra cash, but all that extra cash is exactly just that. It's extra cash again. And we can go put that onto our snowball or into our avalanche and start applying it towards debt. And heck, once you actually pay off all that debt, who knows, you might even decide to keep that job and just keep using that money to invest it or to save a nest egg. But yeah, having a second stream of income, being able to have more money to throw at the debt, it will definitely speed you up in the long run, because right now, any extra cash that we can get per month is going to be able to go right to our debt, and it's going to speed this puppy up. All right, ladies and gentlemen, I wanted to leave you with this message right here. You can do this. I know that it is scary, and I know that it can seem overwhelming to try and start thinking about paying off your debt, but it is such a big part of being able to go on and start investing and actually start to build wealth for you and your family and eventually be able to actually achieve financial freedom. Again, guys, if you enjoyed this content, make sure that you follow the Modern Money channel here on SkillShare, as we will be posting more and more content like this regularly. Also, if you are wondering, hey, how do I get this budget thing figured out that we keep talking about during this thing? Well, go on into my channel, and I actually have a course already specifically made for budgeting. So if you need to learn how to budget, you can go learn to budget right from me. So go ahead and go take that course, guys, if you haven't already. So once again, everybody, I want to thank you so much for checking out this course and for watching the whole thing, and we will see you guys in the next couple courses.